Well, good morning, everyone. How you feeling this Sunday morning? It's great to see everyone's shiny, bright, happy faces. And we are going to talk a little bit about a holy discontent and what that means for our lives. And it does kind of sound bad at first, but it's not a bad thing. It's going to be a good thing, actually. And so it's a new series we're kicking off for about 3 weeks. And to kind of get us in the mindset, first question I have for you guys is, have you ever felt out of your comfort zone before? Have you ever felt out of your comfort zone before? Do you guys remember what happened here in this very room? And also welcome to you guys watching online. Do you remember what happened at Jamie's opener last week? Were some of you guys out of your comfort zone? Let me recap. Jamie did one of the most spectacular openings in the history of mankind, where he had a bowl of names, and he said, one of you guys in this room is going to come up and basically share your testimony for 5 minutes. And I know that some of you guys were freaking out. In fact, looking around, some of you guys were looking for the door, and I think this would have been what you were thinking right here. Like, let me get out of here. And because when we get out of it's hard to be stretched sometimes. It's hard to think that we're going to get out of our comfort zone. I wanted to share something. When I was living in El Salvador, and I'm just going to get vulnerable real quick, if that's okay. When I was living in El Salvador, we had 3 children by that time. Do you know where I'm going with this? No? Well, my wife urged me to have the procedure. Yeah. That procedure. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's great. We'll keep rolling. And so I had 2 choices. I could either go to the United States and pay a couple $1,000s to have that procedure, or I could have it in El Salvador at the public hospital for $40. We debated, and, my wife is, conscious of the finances, and we were self-supporting missionaries, so we didn't have a lot. And so I thought, and so lo and behold, on faith, I decided to go to the public hospital, which they do the procedure all the time with many people, my people, mi gente, Latinos, many children, so they, do a lot of those procedures. And I thought, I'm going to go my faith for $40, and so my wife came with me to support me because I was way outside my comfort zone. And so she snapped a photo of me, and this is what it looks like right here. Which one kid is doing his own thing right there? Okay, yeah. But we love our comfort, don't we? We love our comfort. We love our comfort. We love our comfort zones. We love our beds. Some of us in the morning, it's like, this is what we look like right here. We just don't want to get out. We don't want to get out. But, I think we take it to an extreme sometimes. I started, my daughter, Alicia, helped me a little bit with this, started looking at across the web for ways that we go a little over the top with comfort. Like this bed right here, this is a projector bed. So you never have to leave your bed. I mean, basically, you just sit in your bed and you can watch movies and you never have to leave. But if you think that's bad, what about this bed? This bed, the Luna bed, apparently can control your lights, your speakers, your thermostat, and it'll keep you warm at a certain temperature. It'll also lock your doors. It senses Wi-Fi that you get in bed at night. And when you wake up, it senses you're out of bed, and it starts brewing your coffee. Do you guys want that? That's kind of cool, though, right? Don't be afraid to raise your hand. I know. Yeah. All right. So that's comfort, convenience. But sometimes, now, we go too far, right? Like this. I mean, come on. Can we not reach over? I mean, we have to have Inspector Gadget. Or what about this? A motorized ice cream cone. For those of us who can't be bothered to turn our heads or our wrists to lick the ice cream. This is just wrong. I think we've gone too far. And the top one that I think this is the most comfort ever, but we may have gone too far, is this right here. It's the pet petter. It's unique. It's got 4 speeds, 4 hair lengths. And I don't know if you can see this. You can see it at home, but I don't know if you can see this. Never touch your pets again. That's the tagline. There's just something not good about this. So, pets, cats, pets, dogs, I don't know. But why do we love our comfort so much? Why do we love our comfort so much? I think because part of it is, it's kind of a scary world out there. And sometimes we like to be safe. We like to feel safe. We're safe in our beds, or maybe we're just tired because we work hard sometimes, guys, don't we? So we work hard, and we want that lazy boy recliner. We just want to kick back, and that's what we want. And sometimes it makes us feel protected, and sometimes it makes us feel like a little bit of a respite. But here's the thing. If we love our comfort too much, we can slowly... Can you fill in these blanks? No, let's go back, please. We love comfort, but we can slowly kill or loathe ourselves if it masters us. Because too much comfort is not necessarily a good thing. In fact, there's a quote by, let's go to the next slide. By John Shedd in 1928. He said, "A ship in harbor is safe, but that is not what ships are built for." See, it's interesting because there's a danger at sea for ships, isn't it? Isn't there? There's a danger out there. But you know what? A ship in port, it's still going to rust and rot. And there's a danger in port too. And here's the interesting thing. Discomfort equals growth. Discomfort equals growth. There's a interesting show I've been watching lately called The Selection. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's on the History Channel. But it's essentially special forces operators, Green Berets, Navy SEALs, and elite forces. And they take 30 civilians who volunteer to try to go through special forces training to see if they have what it takes to make it to the end. Now, if you have to make it through some cursing, so you have to kind of bypass that. So if you don't like that, then every once in a while these guys are going to curse. Military, it's kind of just part of their language. But if you can make it through that, there are some gems to be found. And some of the sage wisdom that comes out of these instructors' mouths blows me away. And one of the things that they keep hitting on again and again is that they stretch these recruits because that's when they grow the most. And they say without discomfort, there is no growth. And in fact, they say that if you allow yourself to be put in situations where you're uncomfortable, oftentimes you this is his words, you mutate into a better person. And I thought about that. I said, that's interesting. Because if you think in your life, think about the times that you've grown the most. Think about in sports, or in your career, or in school. Those times when you've been stretched, or it's been uncomfortable, or it's been hard, or you stayed up late even sometimes, that's when you felt like you've grown. But when you're like that cat in the little bed, you're not really growing. And it's not just on a character level, a career level. It also goes a step deeper. It also goes to the spiritual, I would submit to you. Because there's also such thing as spiritual discomfort. Spiritual discomfort. Spiritual discomfort, I think God doesn't want us to always be in a safe place. He doesn't always want us to be in the harbor. And we know that we want to be able to grow spiritually, but sometimes we have to get out of our comfort zones, don't we? And today, if you're watching online and maybe you're not following God, you don't follow God, you don't really know a lot about Jesus, or if you're here, this is your first time, we're so happy to have you. Maybe the spiritual discomfort he's putting on your heart is just to connect and to get to know him and to get to know Jesus and understand what it means to have a relationship with the Almighty. Because there's so much more to life than just our career, isn't there? I mean, we all have to face death one day, right? And then what? Then what happens to our career? I mean, the craziest part that it just keeps hitting me in the face again and again and again and again and again, you know, whether it be celebrity deaths or things that I see or whatever, is that I'm here I am, like we're sharing this time together, but I'm just one man and just a little tiny dot on the history line of the world, and it's just like a mist. I mean, in years I'll be gone, or maybe tomorrow, who even knows, right? And then what? And then there's the eternal. So it's good that we have spiritual discomfort. It's good that it stirs up our heart. And maybe if you're a Christian, maybe if you're a follower of Jesus, maybe you have sensed that you're sitting back, you're too comfortable. Your bed is making your coffee for you now. You have an electric petter. And maybe there's something that you have seen or you've heard, and it's stirring your heart, but there's an unknown. And I would submit that to you as being called a holy discontent. A holy discontent. But here's the problem. There's a tension. There's a tension between the two because there's a resistance. Because one side wants us to be pulled into a holy discontent, but there's a resistance, and part of it goes, no, but that's scary, and I don't know what to do with that, and I don't even know if that's going to work, and that's out of my comfort zone. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's interesting because if we deny that holy discontent, where do we go on the other side? Viktor Frankl was a psychologist who actually was a Holocaust survivor. And he created in the 40s this work, this theory of logotherapy, which the whole point of it, and it's fascinating work. I encourage you to study it out a little bit if you have a chance. But his whole point was that there is more to life than just subsistence. And he was a contemporary of Freud. And Freud was saying, look, man's core drive is pleasure. But he contended something else. Check this out. Frankl contended that it isn't pleasure that man wants most. It's a deep sense of meaning. And when he cannot find meaning, he distracts himself with pleasure. Therefore, it looks like the dominant pursuit of man is pleasure, but man is actually numbing himself because he can't find meaning. That resonates with me. Does it resonate with you? That when we aren't pulling ourselves and allowing ourselves to be pulled into our holy discontent, we go some other direction, and usually it's numbing ourselves with pleasure. And it's not just us in this room. It's the heroes of the Bible as well. And today, we're going to look at Nehemiah. Because Nehemiah had a holy discontent. But he also had challenges as well. And we're going to start by just figuring out where he was situated graphically. Because I don't know about you, but I'm a visual person, and maps really help me. And so here's a map of the ancient world. And right here, I know you can't read everything, but this is Susa right here, the capital of the Persian Empire. And the Persian Empire at the time of Nehemiah was at its greatest height. And it had basically taken over and engulfed all the Near East. most of it. And so it was just dominant. And who was Nehemiah? Nehemiah was a Jew, but he had been taken captive and brought to Susa, or Babylon at first. And he was the cupbearer to the king, Artaxerxes. Now, what does that do? Well, there's a couple things. First of all, you have to know that it meant that he had a cush life. And for some of you guys, not the cush you're thinking of. This is the other cush. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. We keep moving. But this is the cushy life, okay? The cushy life, because he was the cupbearer to the most powerful man in the world. That would be like you being the trusted advisor to the President of the United States. And he had everything at his disposal in some ways. But on the other hand, he was still a Jew that was not in his home country. And it's really interesting because while he's living in this palace, in this cushy castle, and while he's eating his cushy food, and while he is in a safe job, I mean, relatively safe because a cupbearer did have to taste the food before it was given to the king. And if the food is poisoned, then you go first. And the king's like, thank you so much for being my tester as you die. So there was some job security risk there happening. But aside from that part, it was a great job. But he was right there. And it was more than just the food taster. I mean, he really was a trusted advisor. And so he's in this cushy life, and while he's there, these words are brought back to him. And this is what it says in Nehemiah 1:1. The words of Nehemiah, son of Hakaliah. In the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, while I was in the citadel of Susa, Hanani, one of my brothers, came from Judah with some other men, and I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that had survived the exile, and also about Jerusalem. They said to me, those who survived the exile are back in the province in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire. When I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. So what was happening there? I'm going to try to catch you up. I'm going to do Jonathan's 2-minute recap of 150 years in history. You guys ready? Okay, let's go. All right, so first slide. Let's try to get it just a little bit faster on those. Okay, so Nebuchadnezzar down here, I'm going to orient you to my little timeline thing. Down here is going to be the year, okay, 605 BC. This is the timeline. This is going to be a little factoid, and this is going to be what happened. So 605 BC, Nebuchadnezzar, who was a brilliant young commander, he defeated the Egyptians, and then he went on to defeat Judah, where Nehemiah was living in his hometown. He defeats Judah, and he takes thousands captive to Babylon. He takes the best ones and leaves only behind the people that just kind of didn't have a lot of power, including Daniel and Ezekiel, by the way. Then, in 586, he comes back because there were still some problems and they were being belligerent. And so now he doesn't just take people captive, he completely burns everything. He burns the temple. He burns the walls. He burns the gates. He destroys all of Jerusalem. Gone. Then, 539, all the Jews are in captivity over in Babylon, and the Persians under Cyrus the Great, they come in and they defeat the Babylonians. So now the Babylonians are done, and the Persians are taking over, and so the Persians absorbed the lands the Babylonians had, which was Judah and the rest of everything else. Okay, then 2 years later, in 537 BC, Cyrus, and this was like a miracle for the Jewish people, he basically decrees that everybody can go home, or at least a lot of people, not everybody, okay? In fact, 42,360, I guess they counted. And so they returned with Zerubbabel back to Jerusalem. Then, in 516, they've been working on rebuilding, because you guys remember that everything was burned to the ground, right? So they had everything destroyed, but they worked on rebuilding the second temple. And so during Darius the Great, who was ruling over the Persians, the second temple was completed exactly 70 years later, as was prophesied. Then, 458, as the next king of Persia, Artaxerxes, empowers Ezra to take the second wave back, and they return home. So now the second wave is back. Then we get to Nehemiah. And what we just read a second ago in Nehemiah 1:1 through 1:4 is when he gets the news. That's when he gets the news. And so here's the question. Why was Nehemiah surprised? I mean, that there were no walls. Why did he weep? Why would he even think there would be walls, right? Because he knew everything had been destroyed and only the temple had been rebuilt. Well, here's what I think. Because when Ezra, who was his contemporary, went back 13 years earlier, he went back with a lot of money, a lot of resources, a lot of dreams to rebuild Jerusalem and God's people to what it could be. And then what happens is that 13 years later, the news comes back because, they didn't have text, and Ezra couldn't emoji him, hey, walls redone, woo, And so he hears the news, nothing is happening. And what does that mean for God's people? That means that basically they have a temple, but they have no protection. And at any time, strangers, enemies could just come right in. What if your house or apartment or condo had no door? How would you feel at night? How would you sleep? It wouldn't be a pleasant feeling. Some of us have like triple lock because we want that protection. And so Nehemiah feels this holy discontent stirring up. He breaks apart because he sees something and his heart is stirred. And maybe today, maybe you've had something stir in your heart. Maybe there's something that you see a dream for how you could glorify God. Because every single one of us have different skills and gifts and talents. Or maybe not. Maybe it's just not that time of your life right now. I don't know. Only you know. But usually you can go two ways. And Nehemiah was wrestling with this. And I'll tell you another reason why he was wrestling. Because he had no direct calling. Do you know what I'm saying by that? Do you know what I mean by that? Because some prophets, God says, go and do X. Even in researching for this series, I had never thought about that before. No, God never said, go do this. It was just put on his heart. And so it's like, is this from you, God? Or, there's a lot of obstacles to overcome. Why? Because at the end of the day, he had a cushy job, but he was still a slave. He was still a slave. He was still a slave. I mean, think about it. A lot of us get, 2 weeks off for vacation. My friend Bright Meyer, who I love, they just had a baby, and awesome name, Havana, and for their daughter. And he works for a great company, and they have a great policy for paternity leave. And he gets 5 months of paternity leave. Sorry, Bray. If he's probably live streaming with the baby. They just had the baby, so we're all like jealous in here. 5 months, what? His wife actually. Are you guys here? His wife got like no paid vacation, so that shows you the difference. But here's the point. Like sometimes we get paid vacation. Do you think that Nehemiah had paid vacation? Do you think that he could just say, hey, Artaxerxes, I'm going to go ahead and take my leave right now for 5 months, and I'm going to go. I mean, he had obstacles. And what could he do? He probably didn't have a lot of money or resources. What could he do? You may be thinking that right now. You might be thinking, well, I have this idea for how I can improve God's people, the church, or whatever's happening. But what could I do? I'm just one. That's what Nehemiah was thinking. And so because of that, he took that, and this is what I think, and this is so important. This is what we need to do with this. He took it to God. Look what he says in verse 4. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. Look at these verbs. Go ahead and go back. He says, look at these verbs. He says, I mourned. That means he allowed himself to sit and let it fully hit what was happening. Sometimes we're running so fast, aren't we, guys? We don't have time to let anything sink in. He fasted. In those days, fasting was a bigger deal even probably than it is here, because he didn't pick up Chick-fil-A. When they fasted, that means they were skipping meals with family and people and friends. And so he's basically taking himself out of the mix. And he's saying, I'm going to step away so I can step to be with you, God. And he prayed. And how long was some days? How long? Was it like 24 hours? Was it 48 hours? What do you guys think? Okay, got a couple days, got 5 months, 2 weeks. What do you think at home? It was 4 months. 4 months. He sat in it with God. He sat down. He sat down and he's looking to God. Man, that's not my character. I don't know about you, but that's not my character. My immediate thing is I always want to take action. I want to say a quick prayer. I want to connect with God. God, you know what? I'm going to do something about this. Be with me. And go. Get some action going. Get a quick plan. Don't make it too rash, but action. Can you relate to that? There's another side. Some of us, we decide to plan so much that our plans, we just plan and plan and plan and plan. We take no action. Just too many obstacles. But Nehemiah, he didn't do either one. He did the middle. He sat in it. He mourned, he fasted and prayed because it was a stirring in his heart. How do we know it was 4 months? Well, here's how. Because it says here in 1:1, in the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, and in 2:1, when action actually happens, in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, both the 20th year, 4 months apart. That's how you know. And so in those 4 months, what happens is Nehemiah, check this out, Nehemiah realized that he had everything and nothing. Because he had his cushy job, but he had a holy discontent on his heart. And a lot of times, we are programmed to feel like success is a certain thing. It's wealth, it's travel, we sometimes can think, 4-hour work week, Tim Ferriss, if you ever read something like that, where that's the ultimate goal, is I want to retire at X age, 25 now, 32, 40, I'm going to retire, I'm going to be on my yacht. And I read a story and actually heard a whole podcast and about these 2 YouTubers who made it big. And this is who they are. Alex and Mimi Icon. I don't know if you ever heard of them before, but they're very popular YouTubers. And she was actually going to get some extensions one time in the mall, and she couldn't find any extensions she liked. They were cheap. And they realized that after she was searching around for extensions, hair extensions, that there were no quality extensions. So they started Luxy Hair, and the rest became history. They found a niche in the market. Because in July, they started Luxy Hair, and by September, they were living in the south of France. They were living in the south of France. And they started YouTubing, their whole experience and everything like that. And so they have photos like this, where, husband does my makeup and they're doing stuff and they have the happy life and they have a day in Capri, and they're traveling, and everything's great. And then Mimi's all over the world, and she's like, hey, follow me around Prague. And I mean, that is idyllic, right? I mean, I just kind of want to I want to be in Prague right now. I mean, come on, let's all go to Prague. I mean, you want to do whatever you want to do when you want to do it. That's the life. And then, hey, not just that, follow me around Dubai. Like, okay, I get it, Mimi, I get it. You're traveling all over. You got the life. And they really did have the life that so many of us even dream about in this room, watching online right now. And yet, a crash came. And this is what Mimi said. She said, I had it all. She said, I had a beautiful, supportive, amazing husband, a business that is growing and profitable pretty much from the beginning. Healthy body, everything you can imagine. Being in one of the most beautiful places in the world. And for me, it was always my dream to go to the south of France. And yet, I feel completely lost and empty and depressed and without a purpose. Because the end goal didn't go deeper to the spiritual. And so then she says this: success is just a byproduct. First, you need to find a purpose. A comfy life doesn't equal content, does it? A comfy life doesn't equal content. But first, what we have to do, and this is kind of like the takeaway, the call to action today, the thing I would encourage us all to do, is you have to create the space. You got to create some space in your life in order to be able to, because we're running fast, guys, aren't we? It's a blur. I mean, we're working, the days are flying by, and you have to create that space. And it's not always easy to do that. And I get it. I have to do that sometimes. Sometimes I just have to go outside at night. It's late. It's like 11 p.m. And I just have to look up and remember, okay, God, yes, you are God. Those stars have been here for so long. And you're beautiful, God. Some of the full moons we've had lately are just incredible. So bright that you're like, wow, that's bright. And then you think, wow, okay, I've got to create this space. God, do you want me to be doing what I'm doing? What do you want me to be doing? And then you need to get into it enough so that some of us are scattered. We're going like 45 different directions, right? And you got to figure out what's the priority, because not everything can be equally important, if you know what I mean. In design, there's something called visual hierarchy. And visual hierarchy means a way to be able to make certain things stand out, because not everything should be equal in design. You should make certain things pop. And there's things that you can change and play with. For example, size, the size of an object, color, density, how things are grouped together, value, like whether things are dark or light, and the white space. I mean, one of the classic mistakes, and even if you don't like the Holy Discontent sermon, at least maybe get some design tips for your flyers, okay? But one of the biggest mistakes is that amateur designers just love crowding everything on to, let's put more things in there, and that doesn't help. So, like, this would be a good example of how a hierarchy can work, because the first place your eye goes is read first, and then second, and then third, and so on, and then you have some context and some content. And so that's what happens. Here's another good example of an actual flyer with 10 tree, which seems to be kind of cool. I don't know exactly what they do, but I think they sell shirts and they plant trees. But what's the first thing you see? Well, you kind of see the shirt, so you know there's like something going on there, right? Then you see 20 trees planted. And then use coupon now. I mean, isn't that inviting? Just kind of want to click that right there. So, but then the text comes underneath that. You see, that's hierarchy of design. Then here's another good example. What's the first thing your eye sees? The backpack, right? I mean, you're like, so some kind of backpack, and then, I know this is small for you guys in the back row, but tools and for the Trailblazer, and then click the download, because 1, 2, 3, I mean, they're helping guide you, because not everything can be equally important. let me show you a bad example. This hurts my brain. This is rogerart.com. In fact, I don't even know what's going on with this, but I tried to load this website and it doesn't even load. I think even Google doesn't like it. It's like even the World Wide Web can't handle the lack of visual hierarchy here. So it doesn't even load anymore. It's like, what are you supposed to focus on? I mean, what is going on here? What's important? You can't tell. But for some of us, this is how our lives are. This is how our lives are. Everything's equally important. And it reminds me of when I lived in Los Angeles, our street signs. Because the parking signs look like this. This is an actual parking sign. You know how many tickets I got for LA because I was reading that? I was like, wait, so if you do this and this, but not on this day, and there's this exception, and then, but that's a Tuesday. It's like some kind of game. You have to be like a calculus major in order to understand this. It's so horrible. It's mean, and I think it's part of a scheme. But anyways, so some designer said, let me redesign how the parking thing could work, and here's what I think it's a woman came up with, Naomi or something. How easy is that? Well, Monday through Friday, you can't park between 7 and 9, and then you also can't do 4 to 7, and then the other days you're good. and even if you're colorblind, she did it so that you could have stripes, so you wouldn't get messed up like that. We need to ask God, where do you want us to create space and push stuff out and things to get small? What needs to be big in my life right now? Is there a holy discontent for you to build up the church? Have you seen something here for God's people, or can you, something to give of yourself in a certain way? Or are you just trying to learn about God? But you know what? It takes time. We have great Bible studies that we do. We have discovery classes that you can go through to learn about God. And you know what? You might be out of your comfort zone. If you're here for the first time, you might not know people. We have a ton of friendly people. I promise you, I will personally buy you lunch if you don't meet friendly people. Wow, did I just say that? I guess I did. But that's how I believe in you guys. Come through, please. Sheesh. But, you know, the thing is, we have limited space in our lives. We have limited space in our lives. And we need to be able to put it before God like Nehemiah did and sit in it a little bit and ask ourselves, God, I know that that's a little splinter, but is that really actually what you want me to be pushing into? Or is that just like a quick, rash thing? And let's meditate on that. And then next week, we're going to come back and we're going to look at Nehemiah when he's through that period and he comes up with the big ask. And we're going to see how that goes. So right now, as we transition into communion, if we could just pray together about that and pray together and thank God for Jesus and how he allowed that holy discontent to change his life and to guide his life and also change our lives as a result. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for the opportunity that we have, that we can be with you. Father, thank you that we can have more than just the surface, God, that we don't have to just live for the moment, that we don't have to just live lives that don't matter. But God, I pray that each one of us in this room, watching online, that we find meaning, deep, deep meaning in the things that we are doing, and that we're connected to you in the process. Father, that we're connected to the eternal. Thank you for Jesus. Thank you for how he, whenever he was exhausted or tired, he went back to the well. He found his strength in you. And even though he was out of his comfort zone at times, and yet he still rallied with you and pushed into it, because that discomfort produced growth, not just for him, but for all of us. Even thousands of years later, we're reaping the fruit of that. Father, I pray that for every person here, Father, I pray that you would bless them. Bless their lives. Bless their times with you. Father, bless their week this week, that they can continue to meditate on these things. And in Jesus' name I pray, amen.